All right, welcome everybody. It's Rob here from, well, anybody who knows me knows I've done 1,000,001 presentations and webinars, and I've got a different topic tonight between myself and you can see Bob Mongrain on the other screen. Say hi, Bob. I want to make sure I can hear you.
Mike's on. Hi.
He's live and recording. Good, good. So yeah, this is an interesting angle. We're going to talk about nutrition and health and share our stories with you because I think we have two very interesting stories. Now, Bob travels quite a bit, and he's going away very soon. So he suggested we do this when he comes back, and I can't wait. I said, can we do this right now, and maybe we'll do a follow up later because I really think this is an interesting topic that most people who are really serious about their health or are interested in learning more about what we've learned regarding our health and nutrition in the last couple of years. I think they're very fascinating stories. So yeah, Bob, I've known Bob since I was very, very young, probably since I was a teenager. You married my beautiful cousin, Dorothy, and that goes way back to the Blind River, Elliott Lake days, and a lot of history there. So we've kept in touch because you've gotten deep into photography, and I being a photographer and all that good stuff. So do you want me to go first, Bob, or do you want to go first and tell our stories before we kind of get a little bit deeper into this? What do you think?
Well, I can start first because this story goes back just a couple of years, but there is an evolution to it. So
cool, shoot.
It started, well, I guess the real life change event happened for me back in 2017, March 27th, 2017 to be exact. Went to the doctor following blood work, and that's when he told me the big hammer came down. I was a type 2 diabetic. It was for life. There's nothing I can do about it. He was going to put me on medication. It was going to progressively get worse. He would have to up my medication, and I would get severe complications, either losing eyesight or feet or limbs or some metabolic disease, and I would eventually die from one of those complications. Like, hello. And it was quite a shock.
How old were you then?
Well, I'm 65 now, so that was a couple of years ago, so I would have been, 63.
All right.
So, yeah, it was kind of a shock. I was overweight. I was about 270 pounds at the time, which, it's pretty heavy. I was on 2 different blood pressure medications.
Two
different, and I was also on cholesterol medication.
How long had you been on all those 3?
It was a few years.
Okay.
But, even having said that, like, I still was active. I worked out all the time. I went for walks. I got my own gym in the house. But I loved eating, and it just caught up on me, and the hammer fell that way. So it was quite a shocker. The funny thing is, and it's tied to April Fool's Day, April the 1st, is we were going to start a 9-week road trip through the States. And I got this news.
You and your wife were planning this trip.
Yeah, we were planning. It was already booked, so it was just all driving, but it was basically hoteling and restaurants for 9 weeks. March 27th, I get this news, and my first reaction was, don't think so, Doc. Like, there's got to be something I can do about it. Like, it can't be that bad. It can't be for life. There has to be something out there, but there was no hope. It was basically, like, just take a diet and go exercise. Well, I'd been exercising all along. That wasn't the issue. The food was, yeah, okay. So I thought, okay, we'll start on the road. We'll start on a diet. Had no clue at all. All I knew was, okay, well, there's, there's sweets, there's sugar, there's processed food. That's no good. And the doctor had recommended the DASH diet, which is a dietary approach to reducing sodium. It was, just kind of a popular diet. So
right.
There's a 2-week period where you kind of cut everything off to get used to not eating sugars or sweets or heavy carbs. And I'm also an avid reader, so I got to start reading on this diabetes thing. Like, what is diabetes? What causes it? Can you heal it?
Yep.
Can you reverse it? So I read everything from, no idea, right? So one hand was, the pure vegan books can heal and reverse diabetes. And then the other side, which was, well, you can, add more different types of food. I had no idea. So I just studied. And after the first 2-week period, again, eating at restaurants, I started following the DASH diet, but by that time, their recommendation was 55% carbs in your diet. And I'm thinking, well, hang on, like diabetes sugar, carbs don't go with diabetes. You got to reduce that. So I didn't follow the instruction. I'm going to go down to 40%. So, weighing, the scale, weighing my food, making sure I had, the 40% carbs and the 18% protein, and making sure I was eating properly. And after 3 months, that we did our road trip. It's kind of funny because Dorothy mentioned that as we were driving towards San Francisco, she noticed that the distance between the steering wheel and my stomach kept increasing, which is kind of neat, right? But
Wow.
On the road, after 3 months, go see the doctor, get another blood work test, and everything was looking good. So I asked, the more of course, I'm reading through that period of time.
Right.
I'm going to cut carbs down to, 25%.
I just want to clarify that. Now, the diet the doctor recommended was 55% carbs, which you were very suspicious of with that, considering what you knew about diabetes and type 2 diabetes, and what the research was revealing to you. And by the way, I've heard this before in dietitian-approved diets for diabetics who are in like hospitals and mainstream procedures for treating type 2 diabetes, which I find baffling. It's almost like as if the very thing that causes diabetes is what they're suggesting you take in.
That's correct, yes.
How before you continue your story, Bob, how in your mind, or do you know, how do they justify that discrepancy? Is there something, or is it just nobody talks about it because it's a big white elephant in the room? And
well, it's pretty interesting because part of my talking with the doctor, I wanted more education. So like what's available from the government in terms of educating me on diabetes, how to take care of it. So there's a couple of workshops. One was at a local clinic that I went to, attend a few sessions.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was from the Canadian Diabetes Association that gave kind of like an 8 or 10 week course.
Right.
Like every week you get together. They had a pretty big book. And every week I'm going in, and everybody would talk about the struggles and this and that, trying to follow what the recommendations from the Canadian Diabetes Association.
So you're a good student.
Oh, excellent student.
Yeah.
Like I really wanted to go in there.
Yeah.
But at the end of this 12 weeks, every week people were struggling, and I would come in and go, hey, I lost another 1.5 pounds this week, and I had my blood tested. It's looking good. But all the recommendations that was being taught by the Canadian Heart Association was not necessarily correct. At the end of the course, they asked me, based on my story, because I had my next set of blood work done, they wanted me to go and help teach with the Canadian Diabetes Association as a spokesperson, or even go teach. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't. Oh, why? Well, 90% of what's taught in this big book is wrong, and I don't follow.
Oh, that's what you told them?
That's what I told them. and you ask the question, how is it? Big pharma, the drug industry, they don't want this. When I finally reversed my diabetes on my third appointment, the doctor said jokingly, "Don't tell anybody, I'm going to be out of business." It was a joke, right? He was just making fun of it, but
But he had a point.
He had a point, but it is big industry, and it's extremely big dollars. I mean, when you think of it, Rob, a nutrition diet, which costs nothing, basically, you're changing your lifestyle, can get you off all these expensive medications.
So, well, continue with your story then. What happened next so that we can kind of get the full picture?
Well, so I went for my next blood test, and again, everything came off. And every time I went to the doctor, he would take me off one medication. Now, I was going to say that the diet was so effective after 3 months. Technically, I was able to come off all my meds. But
3 months.
After 3 months.
How much weight
pressure, my cholesterol, my diabetes, like all the markers from my blood work were good enough that I didn't need medication anymore.
What about your weight loss by the 3 month period?
Well, no, I forget what it was at 3 months, but yeah, the weight kept on going. I lost from April the 1st to the end of November. I basically lost 90 pounds in a linear way.
So
I just got plotted every day, and it actually went down linearly.
You're a good student, and you track these things. Now, 90 pounds gets you, I'm guessing, to optimum weight.
Yeah, I'm still looking at the BMI. My optimum weight, I'm still a few pounds away from it, from what I'm targeting.
Yeah.
So like I started at 270. I'm at 171 now.
Yeah. Well, you look different. You're all slim in the jaw, and you look slim and healthy. Uh, how did you change your diet? Get specific for us so that we can get
Well, it was a process because I never stopped reading or studying, and I'm still not. I mean, every day I'm spending an hour, 2 hours reading, watching YouTube or watching other things. So I'm continually changing, and it's amazing because every day you learn something new and something different. So, but a lot of it was not necessarily trial and error. It was just like the carbs, for example. I eventually knocked it down to keto style. My last blood check, I told the doctor, I'm going full keto, full fat. And every time I went in, like the third visit, it was like the doctor just said, "Oh, okay, yeah, go ahead." He wasn't fighting me or pushing me back.
This was the 3-month period?
And the 6 month and the 9 month, because every time I went in, the blood work was good. He would take me off the med and I would cut carbs down to a lower value.
When did you tell him and realize and sort of make this expression, I'm going full keto? Was that about the 3 month?
Yeah, that was after 3, 6, 9. Yeah, 9 months.
So you kind of worked up to it. Now you're full keto and have been since November of 2018 or 17?
The end of November 2017.
Okay, that's a couple of years now.
Yeah.
All right. Now you're on no meds?
No meds.
0 meds. And you keep going back to your doctor for...
Well, it was initially every 3 months because that's the diabetic checkup. And then when I reversed it, it was like, okay, well, I'll see you every 6 months now.
Okay. And
it's great seeing the doctor because I have a big smile on my face and it's like, all right, let's go. Let's talk about blood work. And so much so that when we're not at the carnivore state, but when I went to see the doctor, I asked him about the carnivore diet, wanting to do an experiment just to knock down another 10, just to an experiment based on your story that you're going to share.
Well, let's go there in a minute, but I want to ask you a few more questions to your experience because I want to know, how does it feel? I mean, man, it must feel good.
I felt great having knocked the weight down. Afternoon nap was kind of my highlight before.
Yeah.
I had to go for my hour nap in the afternoon. It was just like, it was something I was looking forward to. And now it's like, so I haven't gone for one, like in a couple, like I don't need it. The energy.
You don't need a nap anymore.
The mental clarity is there.
Yeah.
I feel good physically. And, like once you share your story with this new experiment I'm doing now, like,
yeah. So
I'm 65, I feel like 35 in more ways than one.
It's amazing. I want to address this topic, but maybe I'll tell my story. But let me put a pin on this topic, and that is this: like, I meet people. I know a lot of people in my city. I'm out there doing stuff all the time, and I don't share my story. I keep it to myself because a good segment of the population look at me like I'm a freak, and there are people who tell me like. If I want to play it safe, I tell them I'm on a ketogenic diet, but I'm not. I'm on what I call Keto Plus, which I'll explain in a minute. The idea being that it's a tough one to converse with in the general population. Somebody about a month ago, somebody snapped at me and said, "Well, are you a nutrition?" And I wasn't even saying anything. I was just made a very light comment about something to do with the food guide that just came out, which is like really pushing the grains. And I'm like, I said something, I wasn't snarky. And they said, well, you're not even a nutritionist, right? Like a nutritionist is the ultimate authority. But I didn't say anything because I don't like arguing people. But I'd like to just, after I tell my story, just sort of think on this for a minute, Bob. How do you talk to others in the world out there who think that literally keto is the devil and it's evil? And there are people who are so against it and they think that it's the worst thing going for whatever reason. And also I know people who I know a homeopathic doctor who told her client, who's a good friend of mine, I don't really believe in homeopathic, but sometimes they're good because they take a holistic approach and they can find solutions. But as far as the core belief behind homeopathy, I'm very suspicious of. Let's put it that way. But anyways, she said to this guy, she said, if you go ketogenic, you can go find yourself another doctor. I don't want to talk to you. And I thought, that's pretty harsh. You know, it's like, really?
Well, especially as a doctor, you should be open-minded.
Yeah.
One of the quotes I heard, and you probably heard the same quote from some of the people, is when you start medical school, there's a saying they have is, 50% of what you're going to learn will be wrong when you're done. 50% will be right of what we teach you. The problem is we don't know which 50% is wrong.
Yeah.
It changes. I mean, you talk about things like autophagy. The Nobel Prize was just awarded a few years ago, and that's a whole new science all in itself in terms of things like intermittent fasting. Like, the benefits are there. It was just discovered. So it's a changing science, and to be locked in your ways. Just think of a few hundred years ago when bloodletting was the cure for things, like, and if you were arguing against bloodletting, like you were kicked out, you were expelled. Like that was sacrilegious to say that, and yet that was the science of the day.
So I keep thinking that in 100 or 200 years from now, they're going to look back and go, "Oh my God, do you know what they used to eat back then?" And they actually believed.
I think it'll be 30 years they'll be saying that.
Oh, I hope so. So I'll just tell my story really quick. I went full vegan about 2012, and I watched Forks Over Knives, and I was sold. I said, "This is the ultimate authority." I bought the book. I bought the DVD after I watched the Netflix, and I watched a bunch of other videos of similar theme, pushing the plant-based vegan. I was convinced. And I started getting symptoms, which I didn't connect at the time, but now that I switched, I connect, and I can see the connection. I started getting joint pains. In the last 5 or 6 years, I've been to 3 or 4 physiotherapists because of both elbows, shoulder, and my knee. I started getting headaches, which I thought was just, okay, that's new. Never had headaches before, but I get them once or two a month, and then it increased. And I started feeling depressed and anxious, but I'm 61 years old, and I thought, this is just middle age. This is what happens. And I'm not a depressed person. The Provenches. They're very optimistic. That's one thing I can honestly say I was blessed with in my life. In struggles and whatever and changes, I always felt shit's gonna happen. I'm just gonna work through it and keep smiling and laughing and joking. So that's just, my dad. My dad was like that. My dad, my mom, and when my dad was dying, he was just full of humor, just joy, and always. I was blessed with that as part of my DNA. So. But I didn't know. I just kept doing what I was doing. And what are we right now? We're September 2019. So November, almost a year ago, November 2018, I started getting headaches every day. And it scared me. So after about 2 weeks, they weren't going away. So I started recording in a diary. Morning, noon, and night, I would grade my headache from a scale of 1 to 10, and I never went below 5. And I would write down how many Tylenols and Advil I was taking, because I was taking them every day. And I know that's bad for you. So I went to the doctor, and he commissioned blood work. And 2 weeks later, I went back to the clinic. I said, you got to do something. And they put me through a barrage of tests. I knew they were testing for either tumor or migraines, but they didn't know. They sent me for more blood work, and then I had another appointment after the clinic with my family doctor again for January the 8th, because my wife gave me shit. She said, you got to go back and talk to him again. You didn't ask enough questions, blah, blah, blah. So I said, okay, I'll go back. So within about 3 months, I had 2 doctor visits and 1 scheduled in January. It's really weird. January 2nd, I think it was. It was really weird. I was really good at Christmas time. I stayed away from sugar. I just kind of felt I got to stay away from sugar because, Christmas, you're going to have a few extra treats. But I ate plant-based mostly. And, I was a dirty vegan, but I was really, really on a high dose of plants like spinach and kale and quinoa and all the beans and all that stuff. Anyways, January 2nd, I was in my house and this little voice popped into my head and it said, try the carnivore diet. And I was like thinking about it because I had heard about it from Jordan Peterson on his podcast with Joe Rogan. And I read about it occasionally here and there. And I said, what the hell? I'm going to try it. So I whipped up some eggs and some meat and I had a keto carnivore diet, a meal right on the spot. The next morning I got up, I had another one. By noon, I had my lunch and I had no headache and I had another meat meal. And I'm thinking to myself, something's going on here. This is working already. And I was really happy not to have had a headache. When you have a headache, and I was convinced I was dying, by the way, you know, by the first week of December, I was going to bed at night and I was convinced I had a tumor and that I was going to die. And I was okay with it. I was like, that's been a good life. I'm 60. Could have been worse. Been great. I was ready to go. I mean, it was kind of surprised me. And anyways, I decided I'm going to go get some steaks. And I called my wife on the phone in the afternoon. I said, I'm going to the butcher shop to get some steaks. No, I told her, I said, bear with me. I know this is going to sound weird. He said, but my headaches are gone and I've been eating nothing but meat and I'm going to go buy some steaks for supper tonight. So what I did was for that first week, I thought I'm going to keep this going because it's working. And I'm going to start studying it. I'm like you, Bob. When I'm curious about something, I go deep, deep, deep into the rabbit hole. I know you've been a project manager all your life as a profession, so you have that sort of skill set as a part of you, right?
Yep.
So I always kind of thought that about you. I thought, well, Bob doesn't fool around. He goes after this. He's probably got charts and Excel spreadsheets. You seem pretty dedicated the way you've approached all of the changes you've made. And I want to talk about some of the specifics on that in a second. But what happened to me was that first week, I was so freaked out and happy, I could have kissed the ground. And I said, I'm going to keep going. And I kept expecting something bad to happen. You can't eat meat all the time and not like grow a third eye or wake up with a huge rash or your left arm's going to be all rotted off or something bad. I kept expecting something bad to happen, but never did. Anyways, January 15th, we flew to Costa Rica. We go there for 3 months every winter. And I brought a bunch of steaks and eggs and some cheese on the airplane trip. Went down there and I went to the butcher shop down there, got to know them very well. And I just ate nothing but mostly beef, 90% beef, some pork, and occasionally a bit of bacon, which is very expensive down there, and some fish, but mostly beef. And I'll tell you, my eyesight got better. My headaches went away. I felt so optimistic. I felt so strong. And I felt so good. All of the positive things, which I think that pretty much encompasses them all. I didn't check my weight for the 3 months I was there because I didn't do this for any other reason other than to kill the headaches. And I wasn't concerned about weight. I was at the time 195 pounds. And I just kept going at it. And I, like you, I studied a lot. I've watched a lot of presentations by people like Ivor Cummings and Amber O'Hearn and a bunch of really, really smart scientists. And a lot of them have their PhDs in this, and they're really getting into this this whole world of nutrition and what I've come to understand. So when I came back in mid-April, I got on the scale and I dropped to 176. I'm like, holy crap. I'm at my high school weight here. So I went and got my blood work done right away. And I shared the results with you. You seem to think they were pretty good. I don't really understand the blood work, but anyways, I'm going to use blood work more and more. And I just never felt better in my life. I'm just so happy. So that's pretty much my story in a nutshell. And you contacted me, I think back in April, and you sort of texted me and told me, once you had heard about me and you said, hey, Rob, here's what happened to me. And I thought, wow, that's pretty cool. And we've been sort of sharing our information back and forth all the while. Now, you mentioned to me about a month or so ago that you want to experiment with the carnivore diet, which is pretty much what I'm on. And I got to tell you, I find this to be the easiest way to eat, the carnivore diet. I have no cravings. My worst cheat is some peanuts, but I'm beef, meat. I've started eating sardines. and eggs from the farm, but mostly beef and hamburger. I love hamburgers. So, and my new mindset is I don't live to eat. I eat to live. So it's fuel because I want to be healthy. And anybody who's a foodie would struggle with that concept because foodies are all about, I mean, you can enjoy a pretty diverse diet on a ketogenic approach.
Well, keto was pretty good, and I got right into it. I started doing all my own baking and cooking and everything. So, so for a year and a half, my weight basically plateaued and stayed on a keel, even right through. Like my prayer for New Year's resolution in 2018 was not to gain 1 pound from where I was.
Right.
Well, January the following year, I hadn't gained a pound, and that's
Good.
what I was wanting to do. I didn't want to, but I kept looking at recipes. For example, I love cheesecake. Oh well, let's go make keto cheesecake. So all kinds of desserts, all kinds of foods, but I was in the kitchen hours a day. And being retired, well, I can do that.
You can do that, yeah.
All the recipes. But you're right, with the carnivore lifestyle I started about 2 months ago, there's nothing to it.
It's simple.
Basically, you've got your meat, you cook it, that's it. I mean, there's nothing to buy. There's no recipes. So, you just eat when you're hungry.
You've decided to give carnivore a try. You're going to test it, and you've discussed this with your doctor. Have you tried it yet, or are you going to wait till you're back from your trip?
I've been 2 months now.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't realize that.
And I've already dropped, 2 months. Well, when I contacted you, I was reading different books. So, this books like Mark Hyman's got this keto reset. I thought, well, after a year and a half being steady, let's try something. Let's just do something different. Kind of like an elimination thing, just kind of reboot and see. And, so I was looking at different avenues. Carnivore was one. Hyman had keto reset. I was thinking of going on the Atkins initiation thing again, just to cut everything up for 2 weeks. And then I saw your blog on, that's one of the things I was looking at. And that's when I contacted you. I said, I'm gonna try this for 4 months.
Yeah.
So so basically I'm at month 2.
Right.
I just had my blood work a couple of weeks, and what the experts in the carnivore community were saying, that your LDL increases. In my case, my blood work, my LDL skyrocketed right up.
Right.
Which, after doing all the reading and research, initially, like if a doctor sees that, he'd probably freak out and pass out, like you're going to die. But looking at all the research that's out there, like there's nothing to worry about. It's not the marker to look at, because you want to look at your triglyceride levels, you want to look at your HDL, you want to look at your insulin levels, you want to look at your glucose. There's a whole pile of markers that are in there, and there's reasons why that happens that are positive. So, I was kind of worried for a bit, but then now I'm not. So I'm basically at month 2, and I want to go. We're going on, like you mentioned before, we're going on a long trip. Like 33 days on a cruise ship eating carnivore is going to be quite the experiment with my table mates, because no doubt, Rob, there'll be some vegans, because our last cruise we sat with vegans.
Yeah.
Very, very, very vocal vegans. So I'm just looking forward to this, because my iPad is just loaded with a whole pile of charts and this and that, and everything in terms of looking at the carnivore diet.
So you don't get into it with anybody, because it's impossible. I mean, you just got to be respectful and kind of leave it.
The thing is, you have your story, right, with your headaches and that. My story, I reversed diabetes. Like, I mean, do you do that anywhere else? Like when the doctors tell you can't reverse diabetes, it's for life. It's like, sorry, diet changes that.
It's done, and you're off all the meds. So, well, that's interesting that, and you know what markers to look at. I have to get more educated on that, because I don't understand the math behind it. By the way, there's a doctor in town that I've known for decades. He's a good client of mine. I've photographed 2 of his daughter's weddings over the years, his grandkids' pictures. And he's a super nice guy, and I bump into him once in a while. And he was in my studio 3 years ago. I was teaching a 101 photography course. And he was going on about the keto diet. He says he went to this, it's a doctor. His daughter's a doctor, and they believe in keto. And he said he went to this big conference down in, I think, San Diego. And I'm like thinking to myself, well, that's interesting, but no, vegans is the way to go. And he's telling me all this stuff, but the ideology in my head is, I'm thinking to myself, Mo, I respect you. You're a super guy, but that's bullshit. That's what I'm thinking. Turns out, in my opinion now, he was dead right, I was dead wrong. But anyways, my point being this is his daughter just texted me a few days ago. She's sending him in for a headshot in our studio here. So I've been trying to get some time with him as a professional, as a doctor, and then I could bring it to my family doctor, but this guy is somebody who's well versed, and I want to show him my blood work and get his analysis on it. I'd also like to maybe go to Sean Baker, because he offers a Skype call. You pay him a couple $100 or whatever, and you can consult with him. And I want to go down that road. Pretty much what you're doing, you've been much more adept at it and much more focused and much more scientific. And I believe it's your nature. You're a good student.
Well, the interesting thing is, and I mentioned it, like before starting this carnivore, I'm still calling it an experiment because I want to see what the end result is. And
I hear you.
December the 3rd. But I also wanted to go talk to my doctor initially to ask his permission to let him know that, hey, I want to do this. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And when I went to see him, I was fully expecting like, are you nuts? Like, what's wrong with you? You can't do that. That's kind of what I was expecting.
Yeah.
And he's been my doctor for like 35 years. So, I mean, I know him fairly well. I was kind of expecting that as a pushback. And the first thing he said out of his mouth was, absolutely, go for it.
All right.
And I went, what? And the interesting thing, Rob, is he had took his phone out. You got to read this book. You got to read this book. And it was Nina Teichhart's book on, Big Fat Surprise.
Yeah. I didn't read the book, but I heard her presentation, and she has a TED Talk too.
Well, it's technical in terms of looking at all the reports, analysis, and things that were done, that they're all faulty. And it's basically a false message. And what he says is like, they've lied to me my whole life. And
Okay.
this is a doctor, So as it happens, there's 4 or 5 doctors in the area, and they go around bicycling. They're all experimenting now with keto.
Oh, are you
They're
serious?
doing kind of a modified keto. And
Nice.
I asked them, okay, like I'm going for my blood work next week. Is there any other test you want me to add to this just to get an initial before sample? And he said, no, just go for it. Just go do it. All he was interested in was just let me know how you feel, like your energy.
Right.
Like that was his one marker that he wanted to do, because you can't do that in a blood test.
No.
Just record your energy levels. And
Yeah.
I said, yep, sure. So I'm kind of anxious for my December, looking at the blood results and that, to see and see what's going on.
Well, I'd like to get back on do another follow-up later on, if you don't mind, and we could keep this going. Yeah. I think it's important information, and for anybody who's got a closed mind, I encourage them to just open the door a little bit. I believe, from what I've studied so far, that humans evolved, and this is what I've heard, I didn't make this up, I've read it, and I believe it, is that humans evolved from eating animal fats, and the reason our brains got big was because we learned how to hunt and kill animals and eat the fat, and it allowed our brains, which are made of cholesterol, to grow. And that's why we have a different digestive system than all the apes and the primates. We're going back like 3 million years now when we started to branch off and our brains grew. And that's the theory that I believe. And I feel really good. Bob, you feel good too. Do you sleep well? Do you your visits to the bathroom? By the way, some people think this is they have some horror stories from the Atkins diet where it's a much higher level of protein, which you don't have that much protein. You got to balance it out with the fats.
A lot of fat.
Yeah, and I sleep like a baby. I am regular to the bathroom, like consistent. It's like I feel like I'm a fighter jet, and everything's running like a top. I'm just humming along, and it feels like my whole body, my whole system got rebooted. And I believe there's more information there to do with the gut biome, which I'm not sure about, but I'm just going to drop that. We can sort of talk about it at another date, but it's working so well for me. How about you in all those areas that I just mentioned? Do you feel and sleep well?
Yeah. Well, since going on keto, absolutely. I mean, I track, because wear, the Apple Watch and this and that. So it tracks your sleep and this and that. And it's almost consistent. I go to bed about 10:30 in the evening and I'm up about 7 o'clock, like almost consistently in terms of sleep like a baby, no issues there. Bathroom regular as can be, and actually going on the carnivore now, it's even a ton better because you poop less. The one thing that's really interesting, don't really notice it, like before way before I started this, like I would joke around because, things like farting. Well, I mean, I would set off the gas detector. I did. That was my claim to fame. I can set off the carbon monoxide detector with that one rip.
Yeah.
Like there's no gas, there's no stomach, the acids. Like there's nothing. Yep. You just feel good.
Everything is stable.
I go from the time I get up. I don't stop. I'm very active. The gym, exercise. Like you just don't get tired.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to bedtime, okay, time to sleep. You put your head on the pillow, you sleep.
I've never slept so good in my entire life. Well, I've slept really good when I was much younger, but I found as I got older, I would just, it was awful.
You sleep well.
Now I just sleep like a baby. And, I started getting up at 5 a.m., which is kind of early. I pushed it more to 6:37 now, but I really enjoyed getting up at 5, especially in Costa Rica. And I attribute that a lot to what I was eating and the lifestyle changes I made. Mm-hmm. So it feels really good. So. And there's weird stuff, too, that you sort of have to tolerate besides there's a social stigma there. And you got to be careful about it. I don't want to get in any verbal arguments with anybody. But my wife, since day one, she's kind of like, I can tell she's a little bit put off by it. She's gotten used to it, but, we don't have meals together the way we used to. Because, I come in, I fry up a bowl of hamburger. I don't eat breakfast. I never get cravings. Do you find the cravings are gone too?
Cravings are completely gone. I eat once a day, maybe twice. So today I had lunch. That's it. Like come dinner time, not hungry. Well, I'm not gonna eat.
Okay. So
my next meal will probably be tomorrow. We have company tomorrow for lunch, so I'll eat with the company. But if I'm not hungry at dinner time, I just don't eat. And I do intermittent fasting. So I do maintain like 18 hours of fasting every day with that 6-hour window to eat. I only eat once or twice. There's no snacking or anything, and there's no need to because you're just not hungry.
And that's something I hear about, but I have not really investigated further. Is intermittent fasting? I hear there's so many benefits to it.
It's the most powerful thing you can do to your body. Intermittent fasting, like the whole fasting thing, and it's so powerful. They've done some tests, using random control trials and that where they tested people on different diets, standard American diet, keto, vegetarian, different diets with intermittent fasting and without. And it doesn't matter what diet you're on, intermittent fasting works.
Wow.
So it's kind of like a synergistic. If you're going to eat the right food and do intermittent fasting with autophagy kicking in, it's just like you're just on steroids.
Cool.
It's something worth looking into.
Yeah, I'm definitely. Well, to me, I'm convinced that this is a thing for life, and I can't see changing this. I don't know why I would want to. You had a near-death experience. I had a near-death experience. The one area where I find it hard to convince anybody, if I were to use those terms, when I'm discussing this, for those who I do discuss this with, most people who they don't have the struggles, the health struggles, look at this lifestyle. Like, why would they be interested in? And when I say we've had a near-death experience, that's the thing that for me is like my center of locus that is kept me on it. I have, if I've had any cravings, which I pretty much haven't, or any consideration to eat some junk food or whatever, absolutely no desire. So I have the physical benefits of being on the carnivore diet, which kills the cravings. It makes you feel good, and the fact that I have that motivation from the health scare. Well, I'm going to call it a health scare. You had a health scare.
But it's more than a health scare, Rob. It has to be a significant impact on you to make a decision like that. Because I've talked to a lot of people that are diabetic, some, having to go in the hospital to lose part of their feet. They're losing their eyesight.
Crazy.
A bunch of diabetics on insulin. And I told them, hey, here's my story. You just eat properly, follow the right diet and nutrition. You can come off all your medication. It's doable. Oh, yeah, but I can't give up bread, or I can't give up my potatoes, or I can't. 95 to 96% of the people I talk to, that's their approach. No, I can't do it. I can't give it up.
I know, I hear it, and
it's like like, what's wrong? It costs nothing. It just
I don't
changes
understand it.
lifestyle. I don't, but it has to hit you as a person in terms of a significant event in your lifetime where, hey, I've got to do something. I've got to change.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this discussion of ours has inspired a few people to look at making a few changes. So, Bob, let's do it again in about 2-3 months. What do you say?
Yeah, I absolutely love it. And just to add one more thing, Ken Berry in his book, he wrote a book called Lies My Doctor Told Me. And the one thing that he kind of stress on is don't blame your doctor. You can in a certain way, you can blame your doctor, but our doctors, they're just too busy. I mean, they go through their education, they learn all these things, they're going into internship, they're working 18, 20, 24 hours a day nonstop, they get their practice going. They don't have time to read up on the changes that are happening.
Yeah.
And you're seeing a whole group of people. You talk about Sean Baker, who's gone more into this. There's people like Dave Feldman and with the cholesterol, Ivor that you talked about earlier. There's people coming up now focusing on that, but our doctors don't have the time to really stay abreast of that. So you can kind of blame your doctor a bit, but there's so much information out there that listening to podcasts like this or looking at the internet, you can get that information. Yeah. And you really are the number one person accountable for your health. I mean, it's up to you. You want to live a vibrant, fulfilling, healthy life, or do you want to, waste away somewhere?
Because you want to eat bread, sugar.
And don't want to give it up.
So for anyone that want to read my story, it is posted in the blog at meatheals.com. I think you could see it on my screen, I believe. And just go in there in the search engine, search my name, Robert Provencher, Provencher, and you'll read my story that I posted back in the earlier part of my journey on this journey. So, and I want to keep it going. It's good to talk to somebody like you, Bob, because there's very few people that I can talk about this stuff and talk about successes, because most people think it's it's wrong.
Well, I'm looking forward to this 40-day trip because I'm sure I'm going to be encountering a lot of people with that, and I'm kind of hoping in a way that we will have vegans at our dinner table. So it's just going to make life so interesting. Yeah,
I think you're going to find it easy because there's a lot of meat and on these cruise ships and whatnot, so you'll have the option to at least pick and choose,
just
right?
Cooking it right, but I don't think there'll be a struggle there at all.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll let you go then, Bob. Appreciate for tuning in last minute. I just kind of threw this at you, and here we go. And we'll see what goes on, and hook up again in a couple months. And I'm going to put this video on YouTube and share it on Facebook so others can see it. Is that cool with you?
Yep.
Totally cool.
Super.
Good.
I'm looking forward to it next time.
Yeah, me too. I'm really looking forward to it. And say hi to Dorothy for me, and we'll talk to you. Have a great trip.
Thanks, Rob.
Take care.
Chat later.